There are moments in history that stop us in our tracks, objects so strange, so out of place, that they defy everything we think we know about the past. Picture this, a 2,000-year-old device with gears and dials, precision engineered like something from the future, buried in the wreckage of an ancient ship. Or a massive stone sphere, perfectly round, resting in the jungles of Central America, with no record of who made it or why. These aren't scenes from a science fiction story. They're real artifacts left behind by civilizations long gone, and they hold secrets that even today's brightest minds can't fully unravel. What if I told you that there are objects from antiquity that shouldn't exist, artifacts that challenge our understanding of human ingenuity, time, and even the boundaries of history itself? From intricate machinery that predates modern engineering by centuries, to carvings that depict technology no one should have known about, these relics don't just whisper clues about the past, they shout contradictions. And despite all our advances in science and archaeology, some of them remain utterly unexplainable. That's the mystery we're diving into today. 25 ancient artifacts that refuse to fit neatly into the timeline of human history. This isn't just a list of old objects, it's a journey into the unknown, a detective story where every clue leads to more questions. Who crafted these things? How, and perhaps most haunting of all, why? Some were lost for millennia, only to resurface in ways that rewrite what we thought was possible. Others sit in plain sight, taunting experts with their unanswered riddles. So if you've ever wondered what lies hidden in the shadows of our past, or if you're ready to question everything you've been taught about ancient civilizations, you're in the right place. Because by the end of this, you'll see history not as a settled record, but as a puzzle still waiting to be solved. Let's start with one of the most baffling artifacts ever pulled from the sea, the Antikythera Mechanism. Discovered by sponge divers off the coast of a tiny Greek island in 1901, this corroded bronze lump seemed unremarkable at first glance. But when archaeologists cracked it open, they found something that shouldn't have existed. A complex system of interlocking gears, dials, and inscriptions, precision engineered like the inner workings of a modern clock. Dating back over 2,000 years to the 1st century BC, this device was light years ahead of its time. Scholars realized it wasn't just a tool, it was a celestial calculator capable of predicting solar eclipses, tracking the cycles of the moon, and even charting the positions of planets with astonishing accuracy. The Greeks called it their little cosmos, a miniature model of the heavens, but here's the mind-bending part. Nothing even remotely this advanced shows up again in the historical record for over 1,000 years. So who built it? Theories range from the workshop of legendary inventor Archimedes to an unknown genius lost to history. Some believe it was used by sailors for navigation, while others think it was a teaching tool for philosophers or even a rich man's elaborate toy. But the real mystery isn't just its purpose, it's the sheer gap between this device and the technology that followed. How did the knowledge to create such a machine simply vanish? Modern X-rays and 3D reconstructions have peeled back layers of its secrets, revealing inscriptions that function like an ancient user manual. Yet every answer leads to more questions. If the Greeks could build this, what else were they capable of? And what other marvels might still lie hidden, waiting to rewrite the story of human innovation? The Antikythera Mechanism isn't just an artifact, it's a ghost of a forgotten technological age, haunting our understanding of the past. While the Antikythera Mechanism challenges our understanding of ancient technology, another artifact from the past taunts us with a mystery of language and meaning, the Voynich Manuscript. Imagine stumbling upon a book written entirely in an unknown script, filled with bizarre illustrations of plants that don't exist, celestial diagrams that defy known astronomy, and tiny naked women bathing in what looks like green liquid. That's exactly what happened in 1912 when a rare book dealer named Wilfred Voynich discovered this strange volume in a chest at an Italian monastery. Carbon dated to the early 15th century, the manuscript's 240 vellum pages are covered in elegant, looping handwriting, yet no one has ever cracked its code. Not medieval scholars, not World War II codebreakers, not even modern supercomputers. The text flows with the rhythm of a real language, complete with patterns and repetition, but every attempt to match it to known alphabets or ciphers has failed. Some theories suggest it's an elaborate hoax, while others believe it holds lost alchemical knowledge or even extraterrestrial secrets. The illustrations only deepen the enigma. Detailed drawings of unidentifiable herbs, some with roots shaped like human bodies, sit alongside astrological charts that don't align with any known cosmology. One section features intricate diagrams of microscopic cells centuries before the invention of the microscope. Then there's the biological section, where those strange women are connected by tubes and immersed in swirling fluids, resembling something between an anatomy sketch and a fever dream. Modern technology has only amplified the mystery. Artificial intelligence has analyzed the text, confirming it follows linguistic rules but still can't translate it. Some researchers claim to have deciphered snippets, linking it to Hebrew or Turkish, but none of these theories hold up under scrutiny. The most haunting possibility: that the manuscript's language died with its creator, leaving behind a book meant to be read but forever locked to modern eyes. Why go to such lengths to create something so deliberately indecipherable? Was it meant to protect dangerous knowledge, or was it the work of a lone genius playing an elaborate prank on history? The Voynich Manuscript doesn't just defy translation, it defies explanation. And until someone or something unlocks its secrets, it remains one of history's most tantalizing and frustrating puzzles. Buried in the dusty basement of Iraq's National Museum lies an object so unassuming you might walk right past it, a small clay jar no taller than your hand. But inside this humble vessel rests a mystery that flips the script on ancient technology: a copper cylinder, an iron rod, and traces of a long evaporated acidic substance. Together, they form what's now called the Baghdad Battery, a 2,000-year-old artifact that just might rewrite the history of electricity. Discovered in 1936 near the ruins of a Parthian village, this peculiar jar dates back to somewhere between 250 BC and 225 AD. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than a sealed pot for storing scrolls or herbs. But when German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig noticed the corroded metals inside, a radical idea took shape. The arrangement, a copper tube wrapped around an iron rod, separated by asphalt, mirrored the basic components of a modern electrochemical cell. Fill it with vinegar or grape juice as an electrolyte, and theoretically, it could produce a small but measurable electric current. The implications are staggering. If Koenig was right, this ancient civilization predated the official discovery of batteries by over 1,800 years. But what on earth would they have used it for? One compelling theory suggests electroplating, using electricity to coat cheap metals with gold or silver. Artifacts from the same era show intricate gilded objects, and while traditional methods like mercury amalgam were known, the battery could explain certain unexplained precision in some pieces. Skeptics, though, aren't convinced. Some argue the jar's design makes it impractical for consistent power generation, pointing out that no wires or connectors have ever been found nearby. Others propose it was simply a storage vessel for sacred scrolls, with the metal components acting as protective seals. And then there's the missing link. Why haven't more of these batteries been unearthed if they were truly widespread? Modern experiments add fuel to the fire. Replicas using the same materials have generated up to 2 volts of electricity, enough to power small LEDs or create a tingling sensation. Hardly a practical voltage, but proof the concept works. Yet without clearer evidence of how these jars were used, the debate rages on. Were they ritual objects, medical devices, or even ancient party tricks to amuse the elite? The Baghdad Battery doesn't just challenge our timeline of invention, it forces us to ask a deeper question: how many other, ordinary artifacts from the past might hide extraordinary secrets? Because sometimes history's most revolutionary ideas aren't carved in stone, they're tucked quietly inside a clay jar, waiting for us to reconnect the circuit. Deep in the dusty tombs of Saqqara, Egypt, lies an artifact that seems to defy the very timeline of human innovation, a delicate wooden carving known as the Saqqara bird. Discovered in 1898 during an excavation of the Pardimen tomb, this small, unassuming object dates back over 2,000 years to the Ptolemaic period. At first glance, it looks like a simple bird figurine, until you notice the uncanny resemblance to a modern airplane, complete with sleek wings, a distinct tail fin, and what appears to be the remnants of a nose-like protrusion. The controversy begins with its design. Unlike other bird carvings from ancient Egypt which feature legs or perched feet, the Saqqara bird lacks any landing gear. Its wings are unusually angular, with a pronounced downward curve that mirrors the aerofoil shape of aircraft wings, a feature that theoretically could generate lift. Even more intriguing is the tail fin, which stands vertically like the rudder of a plane rather than the fanned feathers of a bird. Could this have been more than just a ceremonial object or a child's toy? Some researchers argue it's evidence of lost aerodynamic knowledge. In 2006, aviation expert Simon Sanderson tested a replica in a wind tunnel, revealing that the Saqqara bird could indeed achieve stable glide patterns with minor adjustments to its tail. Without these tweaks, the model tumbled, suggesting that if the original design was intentional, its creators understood principles of flight long before Da Vinci sketched his flying machines. But skeptics aren't so sure. Many Egyptologists dismiss the aeroplane theory, pointing out that ancient cultures often stylized animal figures in symbolic ways. The tail fin might simply represent a bird's folded tail feathers, and the missing legs could be due to ritual purposes, perhaps an offering meant to fly to the gods. Others propose it was a weather vane or even a decorative throw stick, a tool used for hunting birds. The truth may never be settled, but the Saqqara bird forces us to wonder: did ancient artisans stumble upon principles of flight by accident, or was there a deliberate understanding of aerodynamics lost to time? It's a reminder that sometimes the line between toy and tool is thinner than we think, and that history's greatest innovations might have been sitting in plain sight, waiting for us to look skyward. High in the remote mountains of China's Bayan-Ha region, a bizarre archaeological discovery has fueled debates that blur the line between ancient history and science fiction: the Dropa stones. In 1938, archaeologist Kai Pu-te reportedly stumbled upon a series of caves containing rows of graves with unusually small skeletons, none taller than 4 feet. But the real shock came when his team uncovered hundreds of flat stone discs near the burials, each roughly the size of a vinyl record, with a hole in the center and spiral grooves radiating outward. At first glance, these discs seemed like simple ceremonial objects, but when researchers examined them under magnification, they claimed to find something astonishing: microscopic hieroglyphs carved into the grooves, forming what appeared to be an ancient narrative. According to translations later published by Russian researcher Dr. Nui, the inscriptions told an incredible story of a spacecraft crashing in the mountains 12,000 years ago. Its stranded occupants, the Dropa people, unable to repair their vessel, forced to adapt to life on Earth. The implications were explosive. If genuine, the Dropa stones suggested not only contact with extraterrestrial beings but their integration into human history. Supporters point to the unusual physical traits of the skeletons: large heads, slender limbs, as potential evidence of a non-human species. Even more curious are local legends from the area, which speak of small, yellow-skinned beings who descended from the clouds long ago. Yet from the moment the story surfaced, skepticism was fierce. No reputable scientific journal ever published Dr. Nguyen's translations, and the original stones vanished during World War II, leaving only blurry photographs and second-hand accounts. Modern scholars dismiss the tale as a hoax, possibly conflating real archaeological finds with 20th century UFO mythology. Some suggest the grooves were natural weathering patterns misinterpreted as writing. Others note that the name Dropa itself appears nowhere in Chinese or Tibetan records before the story emerged. But here's where it gets stranger. In 2002, German researcher Hartwig Horsdorf claimed to have examined one surviving disc at a Chinese museum, reporting that it contained high levels of cobalt and other metals unusual for ancient stone artifacts. Meanwhile, villagers in the region still recount oral histories of star people who married into local tribes. So were the Dropa stones elaborate fakes, or is there a kernel of truth buried beneath layers of myth? Without the original artifacts, we may never know, but they serve as a potent reminder of how easily archaeology can collide with our deepest questions about who we are, where we come from, and whether we've ever truly been alone on this planet. Buried in the sun-baked hills of Texas, a discovery surfaced that sends chills down the spines of geologists and historians alike. The London Hammer. In 1936, a couple hiking near Red Creek stumbled upon a loose rock with what appeared to be a wooden handle protruding from it. When they cracked it open, they found something impossible: a perfectly preserved iron hammer, its head fused into stone dated to the Cretaceous period, over 100 million years old. At first glance, the hammer looks ordinary, 6 inches long, with a slightly eroded metal head and a handle that had begun to fossilize. But the devil's in the details. Geological testing revealed the rock encasing it formed around the hammer, meaning it had to be there when the stone solidified. That places its origin long before humans supposedly mastered ironworking, which only began around 3,000 years ago. Mainstream science offers explanations. Some suggest the hammer might be a 19th century tool left behind by miners, with mineral deposits rapidly forming around it in a process called concretion. Others point to the high iron purity of the hammerhead, unusual for modern tools but not unheard of. But here's where it gets thorny. Independent metallurgists who analyzed the hammer reported no traces of carbon, a key ingredient in industrial steel production, raising questions about its true age. Then there's the handle. Microscopic analysis showed it had partially turned to coal, a transformation that typically requires immense time and pressure. Creationists and alternative historians seized on the artifact as proof of pre-flood civilizations or even time travelers, while skeptics counter that coalification can occur under rare, localized conditions. The debate boils down to this: is the London Hammer a quirky geological anomaly, or does it hint at a forgotten chapter of human or something else's engineering prowess? With the original discoverers long gone and the artifact now held in a private museum, further testing remains contentious. But one thing's certain: this humble tool, locked in stone for eons, refuses to fit neatly into our understanding of time. Perhaps the most unsettling question isn't how the hammer got there, but what other impossible objects might still lie buried, waiting to shatter the timelines we take for granted. Stretching across Peru's arid Nazca Desert like a giant's etch-a-sketch, the Nazca Lines are one of archaeology's most visually stunning puzzles. These enormous geoglyphs, some stretching over 1,200 feet long, depict everything from precise geometric shapes to elaborate animals: spiders, hummingbirds, monkeys, all carved into the desert floor between 500 BC and 500 AD. But here's the catch: their full designs are only visible from the air, raising the obvious question: how, and more importantly why, did a civilization without flight create art they could never properly see? The method of construction reveals ancient ingenuity. The Nazca people scraped away the dark, iron-rich topsoil to expose the lighter sand beneath, creating contrast that's endured for millennia. Simple tools and surveying techniques could explain the straight lines, but the intricate curves of the animal figures demand more sophisticated planning. Researchers like archaeologist Johann Reinhard suggest the Nazca might have used scaled-down models and grids to transfer designs to the desert floor, a technique later cultures employed for large artworks. Yet even this doesn't fully explain the precision of some shapes, like the perfectly symmetrical spider or the hummingbird's spiraling tail feathers, accurate enough to impress modern engineers. Mainstream theories lean toward ritual purposes. The Nazca depended on scarce water, and many lines point to underground aquifers or align with solstice sunrises, hinting at celestial calendars or pilgrimage routes. Some anthropologists propose the glyphs were walking paths for ceremonies, with participants tracing the lines to commune with deities, but the aerial visibility still nags at the imagination. If these were meant solely for ground-level rituals, why invest such effort into designs only visible from above? This gap fuels wilder speculations. In the 1960s, writer Erich von Däniken famously argued the Nazca Lines were landing strips for extraterrestrial visitors, pointing to their bird's-eye view perfection as evidence of ancient astronaut contact. While mainstream science dismisses this, the theory persists in pop culture, partly because it taps into that tantalizing "what if?" Other fringe ideas suggest the lines were early hot air balloon flight paths, though no physical evidence of such technology has ever been found. Perhaps the most compelling modern research comes from a blend of archaeology and ecology. Studies reveal that many animal glyphs match species found in distant Amazonian rainforests, leading some experts to propose the lines were a kind of prayer for rain, a desperate call to bring life-giving water to the desert. Meanwhile, drone surveys continue uncovering new glyphs, including a massive cat discovered in 2020, proving we've barely scratched the surface of this mystery. The Nazca Lines resist easy explanation because they're likely all these things at once: ritual, art, astronomy, and possibly even a message to the gods. They remind us that ancient people saw the world differently, blending practicality with the profound in ways we're still struggling to decode. And as long as those giant desert drawings keep their secrets, they'll remain both a scientific challenge and a testament to human creativity's endless reach. From the skies, the lines whisper a question we can't quite answer. Were they meant to be seen by the divine, the extraterrestrial, or simply by time itself, waiting for an age when humans would finally take flight and wonder at the marks left behind? In the Topkapi Palace Museum of Istanbul, an aging piece of parchment hides a geographical bombshell: the Piri Reis map. Drawn in 1513 by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, this fragment of a larger world map shouldn't be remarkable. Except for one glaring anomaly: it depicts the coastline of Antarctica ice-free. That's impossible, right? Modern surveys confirm Antarctica's ice cap formed millions of years ago, and the continent wasn't officially discovered until 1820. So how did a 16th century mapmaker sketch landmasses no known explorer had reached with eerie accuracy? The map's own inscriptions offer a clue. Piri Reis notes he compiled it from 20 older source maps, including some dating back to the 4th century BC. Among these were charts from the time of Alexander the Great, possibly salvaged from the legendary Library of Alexandria. But here's the twist. The map's depiction of Antarctica's Queen Maud Land coastline aligns almost perfectly with subglacial topography revealed by modern seismic surveys, landforms buried under miles of ice for millennia. Either it's a staggering coincidence or someone mapped Antarctica before it froze. Mainstream historians propose less radical explanations. Some argue the landmass labeled Antarctica is actually a distorted version of South America, which Portuguese explorers were charting at the time. The map does show parts of Brazil, albeit with puzzling inaccuracies. Others suggest Piri Reis might have incorporated speculative landmasses from ancient myths, like the hypothetical Terra Australis believed to balance Earth's continents. But the precision keeps nagging. In 1960, cartographer Charles Hapgood noted that the map's latitudes are startlingly accurate, something European maps wouldn't achieve for another 2 centuries. Even stranger, the map's spherical trigonometry suggests the original cartographers understood Earth's true circumference, a knowledge lost after Ptolemy's miscalculations dominated medieval geography. Hapgood's controversial theory, the map preserves fragments of an advanced prehistoric civilization's cartography, later destroyed during the collapse of the Bronze Age. Critics counter that Piri Reis had access to Arab navigators' knowledge, possibly including undiscovered voyages. Portuguese sailors might have glimpsed Antarctic peninsulas during rogue storms, their accounts later woven into the map. Yet no records of such journeys survive, and the icy Southern Ocean would have been nearly impassable for wooden ships. The map's true legacy isn't just its mysteries, it's what it reveals about the fluid nature of history. Coastlines shift, knowledge rises and falls, and sometimes a single fragile document can upend our assumptions about who knew what and when. Whether Piri Reis tapped into lost ancient surveys or simply made brilliant educated guesses, his map forces us to confront an unsettling possibility that the past might hold forgotten chapters of exploration so advanced we're only now catching glimpses of them beneath the ice. Perhaps the most haunting detail isn't on the map at all, but in its margins where Piri Reis scribed a tantalizing note, "No one alive has a map like this." He wasn't boasting, he was admitting he didn't fully understand the secrets he'd preserved, and neither centuries later do we. Housed in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy, a single piece of linen measuring 14 feet long has ignited debate, devotion, and scientific scrutiny for centuries. The Shroud of Turin bears the faint but unmistakable image of a bearded man with wounds consistent with crucifixion, hands folded over the pelvis, puncture marks at the wrists and feet, and what appears to be a spear wound in the side. To millions of believers, this is no mere artifact. It's the burial cloth of Jesus Christ himself, imprinted with his likeness in the moment of resurrection. But to skeptics, it's an elaborate medieval forgery, a puzzle wrapped in faith and controversy. The shroud first appeared in historical records in 1357, when French knight Geoffroy de Charny allegedly presented it to a church in Liary. Its journey before that remains murky, with some tracing it back to the legendary Edessa cloth, a 1st century Christian relic. But the real firestorm began in the 20th century when modern science turned its tools on the fabric. In 1988, radiocarbon dating tests conducted by 3 independent labs placed the shroud's origin between 1260 and 1390, squarely in the Middle Ages. For many, this seemed to settle the debate. The shroud was a skilled hoax, perhaps created to attract pilgrims and their donations. Yet the story doesn't end there. Critics of the carbon dating point to potential contamination. The sample tested came from a corner of the shroud that had been handled, mended, and even singed in a fire in 1532, possibly skewing results. More baffling is the image itself. Studies reveal it wasn't painted, no pigment or brushstrokes exist. Instead, the faint straw-yellow discoloration lies on the very top fibers, as if produced by a brief, intense burst of energy. Forensic pathologists note the wounds align precisely with Roman crucifixion methods, including nail placements that avoid hand bones which would tear under body weight, a detail medieval forgers wouldn't have known. Stranger still are the 3-dimensional properties hidden within the image. In 1978, scientists analyzing the shroud under a VP8 image analyzer, a device designed for NASA space photography, discovered that the shading encodes depth information like a photographic negative. No known medieval technique could achieve this effect, leading some researchers to propose it was created by an unknown form of radiation or even a miraculous event. The shroud's defenders also highlight pollen grains found embedded in the fabric, some native to the Jerusalem area, and traces of limestone dust matching the geology of ancient Judea. These details, they argue, place the shroud in 1st century Palestine, not medieval Europe. Even the bloodstains, when analyzed, contain hemoglobin and other proteins consistent with severe trauma, though skeptics counter that medieval artists could have used actual blood to enhance authenticity. Perhaps the most compelling argument for the shroud's mystery isn't scientific but historical. If it were a forgery, why would the artist go to such lengths to create a negative image, something invisible to the naked eye until the invention of photography? Why include anatomical details like proper Roman crucifixion practices that wouldn't be rediscovered until modern archaeology? For now, the shroud remains suspended between faith and fact, a relic that refuses to surrender all its secrets. Whether divine artifact or unparalleled medieval masterpiece, it challenges our assumptions about history, science, and the limits of human ingenuity. And until new technology can unravel its final mysteries, it will continue to haunt the intersection of belief and evidence, a single piece of cloth holding the weight of 2,000 years of questions. Buried in the arid mountains of California's Coso Range, a discovery in 1961 sent shockwaves through both the archaeological and geological communities. What started as a routine rockhounding expedition turned into a head-scratching enigma when a group of mineral hunters cracked open what they thought was an ordinary geode, only to find a strange, mechanical-looking object embedded inside. Dubbed the Coso artifact, this fist-sized nodule contained what appeared to be a porcelain cylinder encircled by a copper ring, with a rusted metal rod at its core. To anyone familiar with early 20th century machinery, it looked unmistakably like a vintage spark plug. But here's the catch: the rock layer encasing it was dated at over 500,000 years old. Geologists who examined the find confirmed the host rock was indeed a concretion, a naturally formed mineral deposit that accumulates around an object over vast stretches of time. X-rays revealed even more puzzling details. The internal structure included a tiny hexagonal sleeve and a spring-like component, features far too precise to be natural formations. If the dating was accurate, this implied human or at least intelligent manufacture long before Homo sapiens walked the earth. Skeptics quickly pounced. Spark plug manufacturer Champion examined photos in the 90s and identified the object as a 1920s-era plug, likely from a Model T Ford. They noted the distinctive porcelain insulator and copper shell matched their own early designs. But this raises an even thornier question. How did a relatively modern object become encased in rock that, by all geological standards, should have taken millennia to form? One theory suggests extreme mineral-rich water conditions could have accelerated concretion, encasing the plug in mere decades rather than centuries. Others propose the geode might not be a geode at all, but a hardened lump of mining debris from the area's early 20th century industrial activity. Yet the mystery deepens when you consider the artifact's alleged discovery site. The rockhounds claimed they found it atop a peak far from known mining operations, in layers untouched by modern disturbance. Independent geologists who later visited the area confirmed the region's ancient geological formations, leaving no clear explanation for how a 20th century spark plug could have infiltrated such undisturbed strata. Theories veer into the speculative. Some suggest the plug could be evidence of a lost, advanced civilization, or even extraterrestrial visitors, though no supporting evidence exists. More grounded researchers argue it's a case of mistaken context. Perhaps the finders misremembered the location, or the plug was planted as a prank. But with the original artifact disappearing in the 90s, allegedly sold to an anonymous collector, further testing is impossible. What lingers isn't just the question of the Coso artifact's origin, but the broader dilemma it represents. How often do we misjudge the age of objects based on assumptions about geological processes? And could there be other impossible artifacts out there, dismissed too quickly because they defy our established timelines? The Koso artifact may never surrender its secrets, but it stands as a cautionary tale, a reminder that sometimes the past hides its strangest clues in plain sight, wrapped in layers of stone and skepticism. Deep within the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, Egypt, a series of enigmatic carvings adorn the walls, strange, bulb-like objects with curling tendrils, seeming to house writhing snakes. To the untrained eye, they resemble something shockingly out of place in an ancient site, electric light bulbs. Known as the Dendera lights, these reliefs have sparked fierce debate between archaeologists and alternative historians, each offering radically different answers to the same haunting question: what exactly were the ancient Egyptians depicting? Mainstream Egyptologists dismiss the light bulb interpretation as a modern misreading. They argue the carvings are symbolic representations of the lotus flower, a sacred plant tied to creation myths. The snakes are likely depictions of the god Hapi, associated with the Nile's life-giving floods entwined around the lotus stem. Nearby inscriptions reference the sun rising from a lotus, reinforcing the celestial and religious context. For scholars, these reliefs fit neatly within the framework of Egyptian iconography, where mythological narratives were often expressed through intricate, stylized imagery. But the fringe theory refuses to fade. Proponents of the ancient technology angle point to the uncanny resemblance between these carvings and early 20th century Crookes tubes, glass bulbs used in early electrical experiments. The filament inside the Dendera objects bears a striking similarity to the glowing plasma discharges seen in such tubes. Some go further, suggesting the temple's underground crypts, with their sulfur-rich air and copper-lined walls, might have functioned as primitive batteries or generators powering these hypothetical devices. The debate hinges on cultural perspective. If the carvings were meant to represent technology, it would imply a radical rewriting of history, one where priest-scientists of the Ptolemaic era harnessed electricity centuries before Faraday or Tesla. Yet no physical remnants of such devices have ever been found in Egypt, nor do any texts describe their use. Critics argue that without corroborating evidence, the lightbulb theory relies too heavily on visual pareidolia, the human tendency to see familiar shapes in abstract art. But here's where it gets intriguing. Experiments by researchers like engineer Walter Gahn have shown that replicas of the Dendera objects, when filled with gas and electrified, can produce a faint glow, though this falls far short of PRACTIC at L Chinese letter. Meanwhile, advocates highlight the so-called Baghdad Battery as potential proof that ancient civilizations dabbled in electrical phenomena, even if they didn't fully understand them. Could the Dendera carvings be a stylized record of such experiments, blending observation with myth? Perhaps the most compelling middle ground comes from archaeooptics researchers, who propose the reliefs might depict something between symbol and science, a ritual device that used chemical or electrostatic effects to create luminous displays during ceremonies. Ancient cultures from Greece to China documented glowing rocks and bioluminescent materials. Might the Egyptians have incorporated similar phenomena into their worship? The Dendera lights resist easy categorization because they exist at the intersection of art, religion, and potential proto-science. They challenge us to consider how ancient people might have interpreted natural phenomena through the lens of their beliefs, and whether, in our eagerness to find lost technology, we're overlooking the true ingenuity of their symbolic thought. Whether sacred lotus or sparking bulb, these carvings remain a testament to one enduring truth: the past is always more complex and more wondrous than we imagine. Nestled among seashells and arrowheads in an ancient Native American shell midden, a tiny copper coin no bigger than a fingernail sent shockwaves through archaeology. Known as the Main Penny, this weathered artifact unearthed in 1957 at the Nazca Point site shouldn't have existed in a 12th century Wabanaki settlement. But when experts cleaned off the corrosion, the truth became undeniable. It bore the unmistakable design of a Norse coin, minted in Scandinavia between 1065 and 1080. The implications are staggering. If genuine, this coin suggests Viking explorers reached further into North America than previously proven, trading with indigenous peoples centuries before Columbus. The penny's design matches coins from King Olaf Kyr's reign. Around the same era, Vikings established short-lived settlements like Elance Ox Meadows in Newfoundland. But Maine lies over 1,000 miles southwest of that outpost, far beyond known Norse exploration routes. So how did it get there? One theory posits a direct trade network. Norse sagas mention skraelings, their term for indigenous Americans, and describe exchanges of cloth for pelts. Could Norse traders have ventured down the coast, leaving behind coins as gifts or accidental drops? Others argue the coin traveled through indigenous trade routes. The Wabanaki were part of vast intertribal networks stretching from the Great Lakes to the Atlantic. A Norse item traded hand to hand over generations could have ended up in Maine without Vikings ever setting foot there. Skeptics, however, raise red flags. The coin was found by amateur archaeologists, and its exact context within the midden remains unclear. Some suggest it might have been planted either as a hoax or even a modern contaminant, like a collector's item lost during excavation. But soil analysis shows the surrounding layers date firmly to the 1200s, and the coin's wear suggests centuries of circulation before burial. Even more tantalizing are corroded metal fragments found nearby, initially dismissed as scrap. Recent studies reveal some contain Norse-style alloys, hinting at more than just a stray coin. Could there have been a forgotten Norse trading post or even a shipwreck that left traces along the New England coast? The absence of other Viking artifacts in the region makes this unlikely but not impossible. The Main Penny forces us to confront gaps in our historical narratives. For indigenous oral histories speaking of bearded strangers arriving by boat, it's potential validation. For archaeologists, it's a maddening outlier too credible to ignore, yet too isolated to rewrite textbooks. Whether proof of fleeting contact or a bizarre anomaly, this humble coin reminds us that history's edges are rarely as tidy as we'd like. And sometimes the smallest artifacts cast the longest shadows. Rising like a cryptic sentinel from a Georgia pasture, the Georgia Guidestone stood for decades as one of modern history's most enigmatic monuments, until explosives reduced them to rubble in 2022. Erected in 1980 under shadowy circumstances, this 19-foot-tall granite structure bore 10 commandments for humanity, etched in 8 languages from English to Swahili. But these weren't ordinary instructions. They read like a survival manual for the apocalypse, urging population control, environmental balance, and the creation of a guide language for all humanity. And then there was the most chilling line: maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. The mystery begins with its origins. A man using the pseudonym Robert C. Christian commissioned the Guidestones, claiming to represent a small group of loyal Americans who wanted to leave a message for future generations. He paid in cash, refused to reveal his real identity, and worked through intermediaries. Even the stonemasons who carved the slabs never met him. The design was precise: 4 towering stones oriented to track the sun's movements, with a center column featuring astronomical holes that aligned with the North Star and solstices. Someone had invested not just money, but knowledge, blending ancient megalithic traditions with dystopian futurism. Conspiracy theories exploded like the monument itself. Some saw the Guidestones as a blueprint for global depopulation, linking them to elite groups like the Bilderbergs or Illuminati. the reference to 500 million, a 93% reduction from today's population, fueled fears of a planned catastrophe. Others interpreted it as a well-intentioned, if extreme, warning about overpopulation's dangers. The monument's multilingualism added another layer. Was this meant to unite humanity or dictate its future? Then there were the astronomical features. Like Stonehenge or the pyramids, the guidestones functioned as a calendar, marking equinoxes and eclipses. This sparked speculation about esoteric connections. Were the creators tapping into forgotten wisdom or signaling an impending cosmic event? The monument's remote location in Elbert County, Georgia, only deepened the intrigue. Local legends whisper of the area's mystical energy lines, and some theorists claim the site was chosen for its alignment with these invisible forces. The guidestone's violent destruction didn't end the debate, it amplified it. No group claimed responsibility, though security footage captured a speeding car before the blast. Officials called it an act of vandalism, but online forums lit up with competing narratives. Had opponents of its message silenced it, or was this a staged disappearance to further obscure its purpose? The rubble was quickly hauled away, leaving only the foundation, as if erasing evidence of a truth too dangerous to stand. Today, the guidestones exist as a ghost in the cultural consciousness. Were they a warning, a prophecy, or merely the eccentric project of a reclusive millionaire? The stones never spoke, but their message lingers, that someone, somewhere, believed civilization was headed toward collapse and left instructions in granite for whoever might survive. Whether those words were a gift or a threat depends on who you ask, but one thing's certain: in a world of fleeting digital data, they chose the one medium that endures beyond centuries. Stone, and that alone should give us pause. In a small Bolivian museum near Lake Titicaca, a humble ceramic bowl sits behind glass, its surface etched with markings that shouldn't exist in South America. Known as the Fuente Magna Bowl, this artifact bears what appears to be Sumerian cuneiform, the wedge-shaped writing system of ancient Mesopotamia. If authentic, it would imply a connection between civilizations separated by an ocean and thousands of miles, rewriting the story of pre-Columbian America. But like so many out-of-place artifacts, it's mired in controversy, caught between those who call it a smoking gun and others who dismiss it as an outright hoax. Discovered in the 1950s near the ruins of Tiwanaku, the bowl's craftsmanship is unmistakably local, typical of the region's ancient pottery. Yet the inscriptions tell a different story. Epigrapher Clyde Ahmed Winters claimed in the 70s that the script matched Proto-Sumerian, a precursor to the world's first written language. Some symbols resemble Kuduru Mesopotamian boundary stones, while others seem to depict agricultural rites. Transliterations suggest phrases like offerings to the gods and land of the falcon, eerily similar to Sumerian votive texts. Mainstream archaeologists aren't convinced. They argue the symbols are either random scratches, later additions, or outright forgeries. Bolivia's Tiwanaku culture flourished around 300 to 1000 AD, while Sumer vanished 2000 years earlier. No other artifacts link these civilizations, and the bowl's provenance is shaky. It was allegedly found by a farmer, not excavated professionally. Skeptics also point to Bolivia's robust replica trade. Could the carvings have been added to inflate the artifact's value? But the plot thickens. Independent researchers highlight petroglyphs near Lake Titicaca that share uncanny similarities with Sumerian imagery, including sun disks and serpent motifs. Meanwhile, the bowl's interior features a chocmole-like figure, a reclining deity common in Mesoamerican art but alien to Sumer. This hybrid style raises a tantalizing question: could a Sumerian ship have reached the Andes, blending its culture with local traditions? The debate taps into a broader tension in archaeology. Conventional history dismisses pre-Columbian transoceanic contact, yet artifacts like the Fuente Magna Bowl refuse to fit neatly into that framework. Until rigorous testing like residue analysis or 3D imaging can confirm or debunk its age, the bowl remains a Rorschach test. To some, it's proof of forgotten voyages. To others, a cautionary tale about seeing what we want in the past. Either way, it challenges us to ask, if one artifact can defy the map of history, how many others might still lie buried, waiting to redraw the lines? Buried beneath the banks of Romania's Mureș River, a strange metallic wedge stopped archaeologists cold in 1974. Workers excavating a sandbank uncovered this foot-long object alongside mastodon bones, a creature that went extinct millions of years ago. But the real shock came when analysis revealed the wedge was made of aluminum, a metal humans didn't produce until the 19th century. So how did it end up encased in ancient sediment, far beneath layers of earth that dated back over 11,000 years? At first glance, the Aiud Wedge looks industrial. Its concave grooves and pitted surface suggest machine cutting, not primitive hand tools. Initial tests showed it consisted of 89% aluminum with traces of copper, zinc, and other metals, an alloy far too precise for natural formation. Skeptics rushed to explain it away. Maybe it was a piece of modern construction equipment like a bulldozer tooth that somehow sank into older geological layers. Others proposed contamination from nearby factories or even a World War II aircraft part lost during combat, but deeper investigation complicated these theories. The wedge wasn't found near the surface where modern interference would be likely. It rested beneath 35 feet of compacted sediment alongside Pleistocene-era fossils. Geologists confirmed the surrounding layers hadn't been disturbed since the last ice age, and while aluminum does occur naturally in bauxite ore, extracting it requires electrolysis, a process only developed in 1825. Even if ancient people had stumbled upon pure aluminum, a near-impossible fluke, shaping it into this form would have demanded tools and techniques no prehistoric culture possessed. This leaves two unsettling possibilities. Either the wedge is evidence of an unknown, advanced civilization lost to time, or it's proof of industrial contamination so bizarre it defies all odds. Mainstream science leans toward the latter, pointing to rare cases where high-voltage lightning strikes can fuse minerals into metallic clumps, though none match the Aiud Wedge's composition. Meanwhile, alternative researchers highlight global legends of golden artifacts in ancient texts, speculating they might describe aluminum objects misremembered through oral history. Perhaps the most haunting detail isn't the wedge itself, but the reaction it provoked. After initial studies, the artifact vanished into bureaucratic limbo for decades, locked away in a Romanian museum's storage. Some claim this was standard procedure for unresolved finds. Others whisper it was deliberately suppressed. Today, the wedge remains a Rorschach test, an anomaly that forces us to ask, are we seeing a glitch in archaeological dating, or a fragment of a forgotten chapter where human ingenuity burned brighter and earlier than we ever dared imagine? Along the misty banks of Scotland's River Tay, another geological oddity surfaced in the mid-19th century, one that echoes the enigma of the London hammer, yet with its own twists. Known as the Kingudi hammer, this small stone-encrusted tool was discovered in 1844 by workmen quarrying sandstone. At first glance, it appeared to be a simple iron nail or spike embedded in solid rock. But when geologists examined the surrounding strata, they made a staggering claim. The rock layer dated back 360 million years, a time when Earth's continents were still colliding into Pangaea and the first reptiles hadn't even crawled onto land. The hammer's design only deepened the mystery. Unlike the crude stone tools of early humans, this object had a distinct manufactured shape, a tapered iron shank with a mushroomed head, suggesting it had been struck repeatedly. The rock had formed tightly around it, indicating the metal predated the stone's solidification. For critics, the immediate assumption was contamination. Perhaps a miner's tool had been dropped into a crevice and sealed by later mineral deposits. But the quarry's foreman swore the rock slab was unbroken when extracted, with the hammer's tip protruding slightly before being chiseled free. Skeptics point to the Victorian era's fascination with geology and the possibility of hoaxes or misdated samples. Yet modern analysis complicates this dismissal. The hammer's iron lacks the carbon content typical of industrial-era steel, and its corrosion patterns suggest extreme age. Some researchers even claim the metal shows a crystalline structure unseen in modern alloys, hinting at an unknown metallurgical process. If the dating holds, this artifact implies an intelligent species capable of ironworking long before Homo sapiens evolved, let alone mastered metal. Mainstream scientists propose alternative explanations. One theory suggests the hammer is a naturally occurring iron concretion, shaped by mineral-rich water into a deceptive form, though this fails to explain the tool-like symmetry. Others argue that dating might be flawed, with younger rock layers mistakenly assigned ancient ages. But the quarry's geology has been repeatedly mapped, and the Devonian-era sandstone is well documented. The Kingudi hammer forces us to confront an uncomfortable question. Could advanced toolmaking have arisen independently in a forgotten epoch, only to vanish without a trace? Or does its existence point to flaws in how we interpret geological time itself? Like the London hammer, this Scottish anomaly refuses to fit neatly into history's shelves. Whether a freak of nature or a relic of a lost industrial age, it stands as a silent challenge, proof that the deeper we dig, the less certain our past becomes. In the dusty outskirts of Ica, Peru, a collection of small river stones has ignited one of archaeology's most contentious debates. Known as the Ica stones, these andesite rocks are etched with scenes that defy conventional history. Dinosaurs roaming alongside humans, surgeons performing advanced medical operations, and astronomers charting celestial maps with startling accuracy. To some, they're smoking gun evidence of a forgotten civilization with knowledge far beyond their time. To others, they're an elaborate hoax carved by modern hands to exploit our fascination with the unexplained. The stones first gained attention in the 1960s when a local farmer named Basilio Ashuya claimed to have discovered them in ancient tombs. He sold them to Dr. Javier Cabrera, a physician who became convinced they were relics of a lost pre-Inca culture. The carvings depict everything from Triceratops and Stegosaurus interacting with people to what appear to be heart transplants, cesarean sections, and even telescopes, technology millennia ahead of its supposed era. Cabrera theorized the stones were a library left behind by an advanced race, possibly aided by extraterrestrial visitors, who coexisted with dinosaurs before a cataclysm wiped them out. Mainstream science swiftly dismissed the stones as fakes. Geologists noted the engravings lacked the weathering expected of ancient artifacts, with sharp, uneroded edges suggesting recent toolwork. Skeptics pointed to Ashuya himself, who later admitted to carving some of the stones using dental tools and aging them with cow dung. He claimed he fabricated the story to avoid legal trouble for selling artifacts, which Peruvian law protects as national heritage. Yet the story doesn't end there. Some stones predate Ashuya's admission, appearing in colonial-era records. A subset displays intricate layers of patina in the grooves, hinting at centuries of oxidation, something difficult to replicate artificially. Even more puzzling are the anatomical details in the medical carvings. The surgeons are shown using tools resembling scalpels and forceps, with patients positioned in ways that align with modern surgical practice. How would a 20th century farmer with no medical training know to depict a perfect cesarean incision or the precise layout of human organs? Then there's the dinosaur problem. While Ashuya may have copied illustrations from books, some stones feature dinosaurs in poses only confirmed by paleontology decades after the stones surfaced. Theropods with correct wrist articulation and sauropods depicted with tails held high, not dragging on the ground as early reconstructions falsely showed details a forger in the 60s would have gotten wrong. The debate hinges on context. If even a handful of the stones are genuinely ancient, their implications are staggering. Could an unknown culture have unearthed dinosaur fossils and incorporated them into their mythology? Or do the stones record a far more radical possibility, that humans and dinosaurs once shared the Earth, as some creationists argue? The latter theory collapses under the weight of fossil evidence, but the former raises tantalizing questions about how ancient people interpreted the bones they found. Perhaps the most compelling middle ground comes from researchers who propose the stones are a mix of old and new ancient blanks later engraved by locals to sell as curios. This would explain the patina discrepancies while acknowledging the profit motive behind many out-of-place artifacts, yet it still leaves the eerie precision of certain carvings unresolved. The Ica stones embody archaeology's toughest dilemma: how to weigh eyewitness accounts against physical evidence and how to separate cultural memory from outright fabrication. Whether hoax or history, they force us to confront the uncomfortable truth that not every mystery has a tidy solution. And in that ambiguity, they remain a Rorschach test proof that sometimes the past's most enduring artifacts aren't the ones that give us answers, but the ones that keep us asking. Buried beneath the ruins of an Aztec-era pyramid in central Mexico, a tiny terracotta head sent shockwaves through the archaeology world in 1933. Known as the Tekaxitlahuaca head, this 2-inch figurine bears the unmistakable style of ancient Roman sculptures: tight curls framing the face, a neatly trimmed beard, and classic Greco-Roman facial features. But here's the catch: it was found in a burial site dating back to between 1476 and 1510 AD, centuries before Europeans officially reached the Americas. So how did a Roman artifact end up in pre-Columbian Mexico? The discovery site adds layers to the mystery. Archaeologist Jose Garcia Payon unearthed the head in the valley of Toluca, sealed within an undisturbed temple layer beneath multiple construction phases of a pyramidal structure. The context ruled out modern contamination, and thermoluminescence dating later confirmed the artifact's age aligned with the Aztec period. Stylistically, however, the head matches 2nd or 3rd century Roman art, particularly sculptures from the Severan dynasty. This glaring discrepancy fuels two competing theories, each with dramatic implications. Could this be proof of transatlantic contact long before Columbus? Proponents point to Roman ship technology capable of ocean voyages. Historical records mention massive grain ships that could carry 700 tons, far larger than Columbus's vessels. Some suggest a Roman galley, blown off course by storms, might have drifted across the Atlantic, leaving traces of their presence. Others theorize the head arrived via Viking traders who reached North America around 1000 AD and might have traded Roman heirlooms southward. Even more tantalizing are Olmec stone heads with alleged African features, hinting at possible pre-Columbian crossings. Skeptics argue for a simpler explanation: colonial-era contamination. After the Spanish conquest, European artifacts flooded Mexico, and the head could have been dropped or buried during construction. Yet the burial site's sealed layers complicate this theory. Another possibility, a hoax. Garcia Payon's team included amateur laborers, and while no evidence of tampering exists, the idea can't be entirely dismissed. The debate took a modern turn in 2021 when new mineral analysis revealed the clay matched local Mexican sources, not Mediterranean material. This suggests the head was crafted in Mesoamerica, but by whom? If local artisans made it, were they copying a Roman object that somehow reached them, or is the resemblance purely coincidental? Stylistic parallels exist in rare Aztec depictions of foreigners, like the eagle warrior sculptures with their distinct profiles. Perhaps the most compelling middle ground is cultural diffusion, not from Romans to Aztecs but through a chain of influences. Roman artifacts reached Viking settlements which traded with indigenous North Americans who might have passed objects south. Alternatively, could Phoenician or Carthaginian sailors, known for Atlantic exploration, have bridged the gap? The head's small size makes it plausible as a trade item, passed hand to hand across generations. The Takaxic Calixtlahuoca head refuses to fit neatly into history's boxes. Whether proof of lost voyages or a bizarre artistic anomaly, it underscores how much we still don't know about the interconnectedness of ancient civilizations. And in that uncertainty lies its power, not just as an artifact, but as a reminder that the past might be far more intertwined and far stranger than our textbooks dare to admit. In 1872, workers digging a hole for a fence post near Lake Winnipesaukee, New Hampshire, struck something unexpected: a smooth, egg-shaped stone buried 8 feet underground. But this was no ordinary rock. Carved into its dark, polished surface were a series of bizarre symbols: a face, arrow-like shapes, celestial orbs, and what looked like ears of corn. Dubbed the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone, this enigmatic artifact has baffled experts for over a century, defying every attempt to pin down its origins, purpose, or even its age. At first glance, the stone's craftsmanship is undeniable. Standing 4 inches tall and 2.5 inches thick, it's made of a dense, finely worked quartzite or melanite, materials not native to the region. Drill holes at both ends, perfectly straight and symmetrical, suggest the use of advanced tools, yet the stone was reportedly found in undisturbed glacial sediment, hinting at extreme antiquity. The carvings add another layer of intrigue. One side shows a spiral design and a crescent moon, while the opposite features a teepee-like structure and that enigmatic face, its expression caught between serene and unsettling. Theories about its origin swing wildly. Some researchers propose Native American creation, pointing to the corn motifs and teepee as evidence of Algonquian or Abenaki symbolism. The holes could have held a ceremonial staff or been part of a treaty object. Yet no indigenous oral histories mention such an artifact, and the precision drilling is unlike any known pre-colonial technology. Others lean toward a Celtic or Scandinavian connection, noting similarities to Ogham script or Norse solar symbols, but these links remain speculative at best. Then there's the hoax angle. The stones surfaced during the height of the 19th century relic fever, when fake artifacts like the Cardiff Giant duped the public. Could it have been a prank or a salesman's gimmick? Skeptics highlight the drill hole's machine-like precision and the stone's polished sheen, suggesting industrial-era tools. Yet why bury it so deep in a spot with no apparent audience? Modern analyses have only deepened the riddle. Geologists confirm the stone's material is rare but not impossible to source naturally. The drill holes show no telltale marks of modern bits, leaving the method of creation a puzzle. Even the symbols resist decoding. Some resemble ancient Iberian or Libyan scripts, while others seem purely abstract. The Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone endures because it refuses every category. Too precise to be primitive, too old to be modern, and too unique to compare. It's a tactile riddle without an answer. Whether sacred object, elaborate hoax, or evidence of a lost visitor, it whispers the same taunt. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to remind us how much we still don't know. Among the dazzling gold artifacts of Colombia's Quimbaya civilization, a handful of tiny figurines stand out not for their brilliance, but for their uncanny resemblance to modern aircraft. Crafted between 1000 and 500 AD, these intricate objects depict sleek, streamlined bodies with delta-shaped wings, upright tail fins, and even what appear to be stabilizers. To the untrained eye, they look less like ceremonial trinkets and more like miniature jets frozen in mid-flight. And when you subject them to aerodynamic testing, something extraordinary happens: they fly. Archaeologists dismiss the airplane interpretation as pareidolia, our tendency to see familiar shapes in abstract art. They argue the figurines represent stylized birds, insects, or even fish, pointing to the Quimbaya's reverence for nature. The protruding wings could be stylized feathers, while the cockpit might symbolize a creature's head. After all, pre-Columbian art often exaggerated features for symbolic purposes. But here's where the plot thickens. In 1994, German aeronautical engineers Peter Belting and Konrad Lubbers took replicas of the so-called Quimbaya airplanes and tested them in wind tunnels. The results were startling. The models exhibited stable flight dynamics with lift-to-drag ratios comparable to early 20th century aircraft. Adjust the tailfin angle slightly, and the figurines performed sharp maneuvers, behavior impossible for a random artistic flourish. Skeptics counter that nature itself produces aerodynamic shapes. Birds like the swift or the hummingbird share similar silhouettes evolved for speed and agility. Could the Quimbaya have simply been observing these masters of flight? Yet the figurines lack key avian features: no beaks, no legs, no eyes. Instead, they feature symmetrical, geometric lines that mirror engineering principles unseen in nature. Some even show what looks like a pilot's seat or fuselage detailing, elements absent in organic forms. The debate taps into a broader tension in archaeology: how to interpret artifacts that seem to defy their era's technological limits. Are we projecting modern biases onto ancient art? Or could the Quimbaya have glimpsed principles of aerodynamics long before the Wright brothers? Local legends speak of sky chariots and gods who traveled through the air, but these myths are common across cultures and hardly constitute proof. Perhaps the most compelling middle ground comes from experimental archaeology. Researchers note that pre-Columbian societies like the Quimbaya were master metallurgists, crafting alloys with precision that still astounds modern jewelers. Could they have observed wind patterns or falling seeds, intuitively shaping gold into forms that happen to mimic aircraft? It wouldn't be the first time art stumbled upon science by accident. The Quimbaya airplanes remain suspended between two worlds, one where they're sacred symbols of nature's beauty, and another where they hint at lost knowledge or even outsider contact. Whether artistic genius or eerie coincidence, they challenge us to reconsider how deeply ancient cultures understood the invisible forces that shape our world. And in that ambiguity, they soar beyond mere artifacts into the realm of enduring mystery. In the quiet farmlands of Minnesota, a slab of Greywacke sandstone sparked a firestorm in American archaeology: the Kensington runestone. Discovered in 1898 by Swedish immigrant Olof Öhman while clearing trees on his property, the 200-pound stone bore a chilling inscription in runic script: 8 Goths and 22 Norwegians on an exploration journey from Vinland. We camped by 2 skerries, 1 day's journey north from this stone. We fished 1 day. After we came home, 10 men red with blood and dead. A VM save us from evil. Dated 1362, the message suggested Norse explorers ventured deep into North America over a century before Columbus, but was it genuine history or an elaborate forgery? The debate hinges on linguistic forensics. Mainstream scholars dismiss the runestone as a 19th century hoax, pointing to inconsistencies in the runes. The inscription mixes medieval and younger Futhark characters in ways no authenticated Viking artifact does, and some symbols resemble modern Swedish dialects rather than 14th century Old Norse. Even the term Vinland, while known from Norse sagas, was likely unfamiliar to medieval Scandinavians as a label for North America. Critics argue Öhman, a literate Scandinavian, could have crafted the text using popular history books of his era, which romanticized Viking exploits. But defenders counter with physical evidence. Geologists note the inscription's weathering suggests centuries of exposure, not recent carving. The grooves show manganese deposits consistent with natural aging, and the stone was found beneath a 40-year-old aspen tree's roots, implying it predated Öhman's farm. Even more compelling are the linguistic nuances. The phrase "red with blood," "röda med blod," mirrors archaic Norse syntax, and the abbreviation, a VM, aligns with medieval Latin prayer inscriptions Ave Virgo Maria. Could a farmer with no formal philology training have fabricated such subtle details? The cultural context adds another layer. In the 1890s, Scandinavian immigrants faced discrimination, and the runestone's discovery conveniently bolstered their claim to America's founding narrative. Yet why would Ehrman, a poor farmer, risk ridicule for a prank with no clear payoff? His family maintained his innocence until their deaths, and modern scans reveal tool marks in the grooves matching period-appropriate chisels, not modern implements. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies beyond the stone itself. Norse artifacts like the main penny and potential Viking mooring stones dot the northeastern US and Canada. The runestones describe geography: two skerries, small islands, and a lake, matches local topography near Kensington. Could a Norse party have trekked inland from Hudson Bay, meeting a tragic end in Minnesota? Without corroborating artifacts, the theory remains speculative, but it's not impossible. The Kensington runestone endures as a Rorschach test of American archaeology. To skeptics, it's a charming fake; to believers, a relic of forgotten explorers. But its true power lies in the questions it forces us to ask. How much of history is still buried beneath our feet? And how often do we dismiss anomalies because they don't fit the story we've decided is true? Whether hoax or history, the stone's weathered runes whisper the same challenge. The past is rarely as simple as we'd like. In the icy depths of the Baltic Sea, a sonar image captured by Swedish treasure hunters in 2011 ignited a firestorm of speculation. Dubbed the Baltic Sea Anomaly, this massive, disc-shaped object rests nearly 300 feet below the surface, its smooth, rounded contours stretching 200 feet across, a silhouette eerily reminiscent of the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. But this isn't science fiction. It's a very real, very puzzling structure that has defied explanation for over a decade, blurring the lines between geology, archaeology, and the downright extraterrestrial. At first glance, the anomaly's symmetry suggests artificial construction. Sonar scans reveal what appear to be geometric formations, a straight tail-like extension, a series of right-angled walls, and even a set of stair-like steps leading to the main disk. Divers who ventured down reported strange textures on the surface, unlike typical rock formations, with odd ridges and circular patterns. Even stranger, electronic equipment allegedly malfunctions near the object, with cameras flickering and sonar devices losing signal, a phenomenon some compare to the Bermuda Triangle effect. These details fueled wild theories. Was this a crashed UFO, a sunken Atlantean temple, or even a secret Nazi anti-gravity device lost during World War II? Geologists, however, offer a more grounded explanation. They argue the anomaly is likely a glacial deposit, a rare but natural formation left behind by retreating ice sheets during the last ice age. The Baltic Sea basin was carved by glaciers, and erratic boulders or layered sediments can sometimes take on bizarre, seemingly man-made shapes. Samples taken from the site show the structure is composed primarily of basaltic rock, a common volcanic material, with traces of manganese-rich crust typical of slow marine accretion. The stairs and walls could be fractures caused by millennia of underwater erosion or tectonic shifts, but skeptics of the glacial theory highlight inconsistencies. Why would natural processes create such precise right angles and symmetrical curves? Independent analysis of sonar data suggests the object's surface reflects sound waves differently than surrounding rock, hinting at a denser or possibly metallic composition. Then there's the drag mark, a long, straight track leading to the anomaly, as if something had skidded across the seafloor before coming to rest. Proponents of the ancient civilization angle point to submerged ruins like Japan's Yonaguni Monument, another underwater structure that straddles the line between natural and man-made. The debate took a surreal turn when divers retrieved a small sample from the anomaly, which some claimed resembled metallic wood, a layered composite material unlike anything found in nature. Mainstream scientists dismissed it as a type of concretion, where minerals harden around organic material, but alternative researchers seized on it as potential evidence of advanced technology. Meanwhile, naval historians note the Baltic was a dumping ground for wartime debris, raising the possibility the Anomaly is a partially buried submarine or experimental craft. Perhaps the most compelling argument against extraterrestrial or ancient origins is sheer scale. Constructing a 200-foot disk in ancient times without leaving any other traces of culture or tools strains credibility. Yet the Anomaly's eerie perfection keeps the mystery alive. Even glacial deposits don't typically form such UFO-like shapes, leaving just enough room for doubt to thrive. For now, the Baltic Sea Anomaly remains an enigma wrapped in silt and speculation. It challenges us to question how easily we distinguish nature's artistry from human or otherworldly handiwork. Whether a geological oddity or something far more extraordinary, it's a reminder that the ocean floor, the least explored part of our planet, still holds secrets that refuse to surface quietly. Deep in the jungles of Costa Rica, hundreds of stone spheres lie scattered across the landscape, some as small as a grapefruit, others towering taller than a person, with diameters exceeding 8 feet. Known locally as Los Bolas, these nearly perfect orbs, crafted by the ancient Decode people between 300 and 1500 AD, defy easy explanation with their eerie precision. How did a civilization without modern tools carve granite and gabbro into shapes that rival the accuracy of today's laser-guided machinery? And more perplexing, why? The sphere's craftsmanship borders on the supernatural. Despite their massive weight, some tipping the scales at 16 tons, they achieve near-flawless roundness with surface variations of less than 2 millimeters. Archaeologists speculate the Decode sculpted them using a combination of controlled fractures, heat treatment, and painstaking abrasion with stone tools, yet no workshop sites or half-finished spheres have ever been found. Even more baffling is their material. Many were carved from hard volcanic rock sourced miles away, requiring either ingenious transport methods or a lost technique for shaping stone on site. Their purpose is an even greater riddle. Some spheres cluster near ceremonial sites, arranged in geometric patterns that align with solstice sunrises or cardinal directions, hinting at an astronomical function. At Finca 6, a group of orbs forms a straight line pointing magnetic north, while others at Batambul appear to mirror constellations. Yet in other locations, they're strewn haphazardly, as if discarded mid-project. Local lore speaks of the spheres as gifts from the gods, or even navigational aids for celestial beings, theories that, while poetic, offer little concrete evidence. The mystery deepens when you consider their cultural context. The Decodes left no written records, and Spanish colonists documented nothing about the spheres, suggesting their significance faded before European contact. Modern researchers face another hurdle. Many spheres were dynamited in the 1930s by treasure hunters convinced they hid gold, or rolled into gardens as ornaments, erasing crucial archaeological context. Recent LiDAR scans have revealed new spheres buried under sediment, their original alignment still intact. One tantalizing discovery shows a group arranged in a pattern matching the Pleiades cluster during the rainy season's onset, suggesting a link to agricultural cycles. Meanwhile, isotopic analysis traces some stones to quarries over 50 miles away, proving the Decodes undertook massive logistical efforts for these objects. The spheres resist categorization. Are they monuments, calendars, or something more enigmatic? Their silence speaks volumes, reminding us that some ancient achievements transcend practicality, existing not just as tools, but as testaments to a civilization's obsession with perfection, the cosmos, and the eternal quest to shape the world into something mysteriously, beautifully round. Deep in the mines of South Africa's Precambrian rock layers, miners in the 1970s uncovered a series of metallic spheres so strange they've been called the out-of-place artifacts to end all out-of-place artifacts. Known as the grooved spheres, or more dramatically, the Klerksdorp spheres, these fist-sized objects boast perfectly parallel grooves encircling their surfaces, lines so precise they look machined. But here's the twist: the rock they were embedded in dates back a staggering 3 billion years, a time when Earth's only life forms were single-celled microbes. So how could something so unnaturally symmetrical exist in an era before multicellular life, let alone tool-making civilizations? The spheres fall into two main types. The first are solid, bluish-hued metal, often hematite or pyrite, with a smooth, almost polished finish. The second, more controversial variety are hollow, with a fibrous, spongy core and a thin shell of nickel-steel alloy, a material that shouldn't occur naturally at all. But it's the grooves that really set conspiracy theorists alight. Running like lathe marks around each sphere's equator, these ridges are spaced with eerie uniformity, some so fine they resemble the rifling inside a gun barrel. To the untrained eye, they scream manufactured, yet mainstream geology insists these features are anything but artificial. Experts argue the spheres are concretions, natural mineral formations that accrete in layers around a central nucleus, like a pearl in an oyster. The grooves, they claim, result from crystal growth patterns or post-formation weathering. Some geologists point to Moqui marbles, similar iron-rich spheres found in Utah, which form through groundwater deposition. As for the hollow ones, gas bubbles trapped during volcanic activity could explain the cavities, while the nickel-steel might stem from rare meteoric contamination. But skeptics of the natural origin theory highlight glaring inconsistencies. Concretions typically exhibit rough, irregular surfaces, not machine-like precision. The grooves on the Klerksdorp spheres show no signs of fractal cracking or erosion. Instead, they maintain razor-sharp edges even under microscopic scrutiny. Even stranger, some spheres were found clustered together, as if deliberately grouped rather than randomly scattered like natural nodules. Then there's the testimony of miners who claim the spheres occasionally vibrate when placed on flat surfaces, though no scientific study has verified this. The debate takes a speculative turn when you consider Earth's deep history. 3 billion years ago, our planet was a toxic wasteland of volcanic fumes and shallow seas. If these spheres are artificial, who or what could have made them? Ancient astronaut theorists propose an extraterrestrial explanation, pointing to similar grooved artifacts in alleged UFO debris. Others suggest a lost terrestrial civilization, perhaps one as advanced as ours, that rose and fell in a forgotten epoch. After all, Earth's crust is constantly recycled by plate tectonics. Could entire chapters of pre-human history have been swallowed by the mantle, leaving only these enigmatic orbs as clues? Mainstream science bristles at these ideas, and for good reason. No other artifacts, structures, or traces of technology accompany the spheres. If a civilization capable of precision metallurgy existed, where are its cities, tools, or waste products? The burden of proof, geologists argue, lies with those making extraordinary claims. Yet the sphere's defenders counter that absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, especially when dealing with time spans so vast, even mountains erode to dust. Perhaps the most compelling middle ground comes from material science. Recent analyses reveal some spheres contain unusual ratios of rare earth metals, hinting at exotic formation conditions. Could they be the byproduct of a freak geological process we've yet to understand, one that mimics artificial design? Or does their very existence force us to reconsider the boundaries of natural phenomena? The Klerksdorp spheres endure because they live in the liminal space between known and unknown. Whether cosmic accident or crafted relic, they challenge our arrogance about being the first to shape this planet. And in that challenge lies their power, not just as objects, but as mirrors reflecting how much we still don't understand about the deep, dark abyss of time. Scattered across the rolling highlands of northern Laos, an eerie landscape unfolds thousands of ancient stone jars, some as tall as a person, others small enough to cradle in your arms, dotting the earth in clusters of dozens or even hundreds. This is the Plain of Jars, one of Southeast Asia's most haunting archaeological mysteries. Carved from rugged sandstone and granite, these massive vessels weigh up to several tons each, their interiors hollowed out with astonishing precision. But here's the riddle: who crafted them, how did they move them, and most perplexing of all, why? Dating back to the Iron Age between 500 BC and 500 AD, the jars have long been tied to funeral rites. Local legends speak of a giant king who used them to brew rice wine for a great victory celebration, while others claim they stored rainwater for weary travelers. But archaeological evidence paints a grimmer picture. Excavations reveal human remains, burial goods, and ceramic fragments inside and around the jars, suggesting they served as crypts or ossuaries. Some researchers propose a secondary burial practice where bodies were left to decompose in the jars before bones were collected for final interment. This aligns with customs still observed by some hill tribes in the region, who expose their dead to the elements before bone-washing ceremonies, yet the sheer scale of the site defies easy explanation. Over 90 known jar fields sprawl across Laos' Xingquang province, with the largest holding nearly 400 jars. How did an ancient society without wheels or draft animals transport these massive stones from distant quarries? Some jars show signs of being dragged, their bases grooved from friction, while others may have been floated on bamboo rafts during monsoon floods. Even more puzzling are the stone discs occasionally found nearby, some carved with human or animal motifs thought to be lids, though none fit the jars perfectly. Were they symbolic, or did they serve another purpose entirely? The Plain of Jars also bears scars from modern history. During the Vietnam War, American bombers targeted the region, leaving the landscape pockmarked with craters and littered with unexploded ordnance. This tragic legacy has hindered research, with large areas still too dangerous to excavate. But recent surveys using ground-penetrating radar have revealed underground chambers and additional jars buried beneath the soil, hinting at a far more complex funerary landscape than previously imagined. Local oral traditions add another layer of intrigue. The ethnic groups living near the jars today, the Khmu and Hmong, speak of ancient peoples called the Ka, who they claim built the jars before vanishing. Could these have been the ancestors of modern-day Austroasiatic tribes, or a completely lost culture? Linguistic clues are scarce, and no written records exist to fill the gap. Even the jars' distribution raises questions. Why cluster them in specific sites, often near mountain passes or streams? Some theorists suggest they mark trade routes or territorial boundaries, while others see them as ritual waypoints for the dead's journey to the afterlife. Modern science has peeled back a few layers of the mystery. Mineral analysis traces some jars to sandstone outcrops miles away, proving their creators undertook ambitious quarrying projects. Then there are the peculiar jar cemeteries, where broken vessels lie interred in pits intentionally smashed in some long-forgotten ceremony. But every answer uncovers new questions. Why do some jars contain only infants' bones? Why are others arranged in geometric patterns aligning with solstice sunrises? The Plain of Jars refuses to surrender its secrets. Whether funeral urns, brewing vats, or something even stranger, these silent stone sentinels stand as a testament to a civilization that mastered stonework without leaving a name. And in their quiet persistence, they challenge us to rethink what we know about the ancient world, one jar at a time. From the celestial precision of the Antikythera Mechanism to the uncanny aircraft-like figurines of the Quimbaya, these 25 artifacts don't just defy explanation, they rewrite the rules of what we thought possible. Each one is a crack in the foundation of history, a whisper from the past that challenges the tidy timelines we've constructed. How could a 2,000-year-old battery exist centuries before its time? Why would a civilization carve stone so perfectly round that modern engineers can't replicate their precision without lasers? And what secrets are still locked inside the untranslatable pages of the Voynich Manuscript? These aren't just curiosities, they're invitations to rethink everything we know about human ingenuity, lost civilizations, and even our place in the cosmos. Some of these mysteries might one day surrender their secrets to advancing science. Maybe a new imaging technique will finally decode the dendera lights, or a forgotten manuscript will surface to explain the Saqqara bird's aerodynamics. But others, like the Dropa stones or the eerie Baltic Sea anomaly, might forever hover just beyond our grasp, tantalizing us with questions that outlast generations. That's the thrill of archaeology. For every answer, there's a deeper riddle waiting. So what do you think? Are these artifacts proof of forgotten technologies, extraterrestrial contact, or simply our own tendency to see patterns in the chaos of time? The comments are your excavation site. Drop your wildest theories, debate the possibilities, and let's keep the conversation alive. And if you're hungry for more mind-bending mysteries, hit that subscribe button. History's greatest puzzles are far from solved, and the next discovery might just be the one that shatters the textbook for good. Until then, keep questioning, keep wondering, and remember, the past is always stranger than we imagine.